selling the house and just like not even fucking telling me. That hit home. They were just like, yeah, we're going to Costa Rica, the house is sold already. So that's that.
This is the Q Drop podcast, and these are the stories of families torn apart by QAnon. When my mom turned 60, my whole family was living in Mexico. It was 2009. My brother and I wanted to make a really big deal out of it. So we invited all the other expats we knew, bought countless bottles of $4 tequila from Mega, and twice as many limes. We bought a piñata, and we took over the pool deck of my parents' condo building, and it was the bash of the year. And that was an accomplishment when you're talking about the expat community in Playa del Carmen. To this day, when we get together, we still reminisce about this unforgettable night. We talk about how Johnny Two Shots earned his nickname, doubling up every time we called for tequila shots. We talk about the force with which I blew apart the piñata. We laugh, recalling the unlikely couple who ended up making out in the pool half the night. This was my family. We traveled together. We partied together. We threw each other epic birthday bashes that 50-odd British, Aussie, Canadian, and American expats in the Mayan Riviera will never forget. We were each other's best friends, and we looked forward to the time we would spend together. We were lucky to have had this at all, and so was my guest in this week's episode, Flo. One of two boys, Flo was born in the German Democratic Republic. More commonly known as East Germany, the German Democratic Republic was formed in 1949 as a response to the events of World War II. A plan was developed by Great Britain, the US, France, and the Soviet Union to occupy Germany. Understand, when the war ended, Germany was left in tatters. Its government had imploded. They were apprehended. They were facing war crimes charges. The forces that had liberated Germany couldn't just unlock the gates and leave the next day. It was crucial for the entire region to bring some kind of stability to Germany and its government. As a result, Germany was carved up by the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, and each would occupy and rule their territory in vastly different ways. Meeting the definition of a totalitarian dictatorship, Soviet-occupied East Germany was kept separate from West Berlin by the Berlin Wall, after it was erected in 1961. The wall had been a response to East Berlin losing a large portion of its population as residents chose to leave the dictatorship to live in the West, where they had more freedom. The infamous Checkpoint Charlie was one of several border crossings along the Berlin Wall that travelers would pass through to move between East and West Berlin. Of course, East Berlin residents were not permitted to leave in most cases. As someone who grew up in the 80s, I recall seeing stories of defections on the news. Sometimes the stories were triumphant tales detailing how an East Berlin family managed to cross the wall without detection and reach freedom on the other side. Other times, the stories would be of grisly deaths, families shot dead as they ran for a better life. The occupying Soviet forces killed hundreds of people who tried to escape East Berlin. In East Germany, as the wall still stood, Flo began his life.
I still was born like in the German Democratic Republic, so when Germany was still split.
It was November 1989 when the East Berlin Communist Party announced that German Democratic Republic citizens were free to move between East and West Germany once again. That night, Germans on both sides of the wall flooded the streets in celebration, chanting, singing, and drinking, and many of them brought hammers, pickaxes, and other tools to dismantle the wall. That's when Flo's family jumped on the opportunity to flee Eastern Germany. Flo was just 1.5 years old, and his mother was pregnant with his younger brother.
Everyone basically thought, okay, the wall will just stay down for a day or two. So no one really thought, okay, it's gonna be like constant now, the wall is gone. The people in the East, they were like very suspicious, and they were like, okay, this might just last a very, very short time, let's fuck off. So everyone basically everyone loaded all the things they could basically carry into their cars, and not like trucks like in Canada or in the US, like these big cars, like small cars, like a German Beetle or something like this. They didn't even have a Beetle in the East. They had like some other car which was kind of shitty, and they put everything in there. Some people even put like the washing machine on their roofs and shit, and they all went because they didn't know how long the wall will stay down. So my parents didn't defect.
Flo, who you can see in videos from this interview on the Q Dropped Patreon, the link is in the show notes, says his family was incredibly close as he grew up.
We were like really tight-knit, like there was never any issues or something, like, no big fights or stuff like this. Of course, there will be some bad words and some fights in every family, but I think we were like a really good family.
Like me with my parents, Flo's relationship with his parents had always been good.
Really good. Like, especially with my mom was really good. Like I used to hang out with them together with my girlfriend as well. Like until now, until the last 2 years. So we would travel with them. We would like hang out there, I'd meet up with them rather than with friends or something, because I considered them my best friends, basically. Like we had a really good relationship. My mom, she would confide everything in me. Like, and I would too. Like, we knew everything from each other, stuff like this.
Flo grew up in a highly religious household. His family were evangelical Christians.
I grew up, that's important to say, I guess, pretty like, Christian. I'm not anymore. Like, I haven't been for 10 years, and I'm not planning going back to this kind of thing. But in hindsight, when I look back, I think that was a big part of the whole thing we're talking about today. And I see a correlation between these things.
He says he can look back on his life and see that his family's religion laid the groundwork for their QAnon beliefs today.
This conspiracy stuff was always like a little bit there, because like especially in these like evangelical Christian circles, it's not unusual.
Though my parents were never religious, I can also look back and see signs of conspiratorial thinking in my parents throughout my life as well. Like Flo, I never worried about it because it never had a real-world effect on my life or theirs.
It didn't have any consequences ever.
It was in the wake of 9/11, though, that conspiracies became a normal part of Flo's life.
The first time I really noticed it was like after 9/11. There was a lot of deep state conspiracy stuff here as well, not just in the US. It was really big here as well because like, for example, airports changed the rules and stuff like this, so it would hit us in Europe as well,
Flo knows what it's like to become wrapped up in conspiratorial thought and to believe nothing is as it seems. Because it wasn't just his parents who distrusted the official story of 9/11. Flo was also a conspiracy theorist at the time.
I was in this as well. I used to believe in this shit as well, like deep state stuff. I was in it like 100%. Like I would like go and try to like change people's minds and stuff. So I know I walked in those shoes, So And I was in that for maybe like 10 years or something, and then I just realized it's all fucking bullcrap, because like I suffered. Like if you have this kind of thinking, you suffer every day.
Years later, the summer of 2015 in Germany saw what was dubbed the Great Migration. Millions of Syrian refugees fled their home country to escape the kind of war-torn violence that is nearly impossible for people like myself to understand. They were fleeing for their lives, the lives of their children. In the midst of this, Germany's Federal Office of Migration and Refugees announced that if they made it to Germany, Syrians could apply for asylum. Close to 2 million people would apply for asylum in Germany in the days, months, and years that followed.
People wanted to let them in because they were like, they had empathy and stuff, and it was all good. But then, like problems started to arise, like crime went up and stuff like this. So new political parties would form, and there were still like right-wing ones. And my parents would start voting for them.
This right-wing party didn't seem so extreme at first.
If you were to translate the name, it would be like the Alternative for Germany. That would be the name of the party. And this party changed over the years. It got more and more right-wing. Like they're basically Nazis now at this point, And my parents voted for those people as well. And they're like, yeah, they might have a couple of bad apples, but still best party you could vote for and stuff. And that's totally not fine with me.
When we come back, Flo tells us how the pandemic affected his tight-knit family. The Q-Drop podcast may be released in audio-only format, but we record every interview on video. You can get access to clips from these videos on the Q-Dropped Patreon. Patrons of the Q-Dropped podcast get instant access to bonus material from each episode, including extras that didn't make it into the final edit, as well as video clips. We might even throw in some patron-only episodes from time to time. Pledges start at just $3 per month, so sign up now at the link in the show notes. If you want to support the podcast for free, just rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like the video on YouTube, and comment to please those algorithm gods. Be sure to share it with everyone you know. Now back to the show. When COVID hit the world, Flo wasn't in Germany.
I was like traveling the world with my girlfriend. I was in New Zealand. And because New Zealand didn't have any COVID, we decided to stay there.
His parents were with him in New Zealand as the borders began to shut down.
The funny thing is, when COVID hit, they were with me in New Zealand. So the lockdown would come when we were traveling around in a van in New Zealand. And then they had to fly home, and they were some of the lucky ones that still could take their flight, because most airliners they wouldn't fly anymore.
Flo says that when they parted ways, his parents were taking the pandemic seriously, and there were no signs of conspiratorial thinking tied to COVID-19.
And they were still like, oh, be careful, guys, there's this new virus and stuff.
Flo stayed in touch with his family on WhatsApp. It took no time at all before he could tell from their messages that his parents had become radicalized.
And then they get home, and 3 to 4 weeks after, they were already in it. It didn't even take a month, and they changed like the camp.
His parents would try to be subtle about their COVID-19 conspiracy theories at first.
It was subtle. They would, like, on the phone, they would say things like, don't you think it's interesting that this and this? And I was like, oh shit, I know where this is going.
Recognizing patterns he had followed as an ex-conspiracy theorist, Flo became alarmed and couldn't help but worry about his parents.
I knew from the beginning, because I knew how it was for me, that it's not gonna end like that easily. It's a hole. It's like literally you fall into it. You're falling deeper and deeper and deeper. I was really worried, and I told my girlfriend, and she didn't believe me that it was that urgent.
Sadly, Flo's girlfriend's parents have also found their way into some Q-adjacent conspiratorial ideas.
And I told her, like, you have to talk to your parents. Don't let them fall into this hole.
Flo's parents began flooding the family group chat with links to disinformation and conspiracy theories.
I had to try to remotely, change their view, which now I realize was like futile, you know, it's not gonna work.
He became concerned for his grandparents, who were also in the group chat.
My grandparents were in this chat as well. And my grandparents, like, they're old. And I really feared them maybe not getting the vaccine and dying.
It quickly became apparent to Flo that arguing with his parents was futile, and his focus turned to convincing them to stop exposing his grandparents to the misinformation they were sharing.
So I was really set on, like, saying to my parents, you know, like, believe in what you want, but please stop dragging them into this shit. I'm scared, like, for their lives, you know. And if you're so sure about all that stuff, that's good for you, but you can't, because you're no doctors, you know. So we have to be, like, conservative in this issue and try to make everyone stay alive and healthy and stuff.
Flo says it was incredibly frustrating to have to do all of this remotely.
So I was very, very far away, and I had all these chats going on. It must be around 50 pages.
Flo's parents weren't just QAnon adherents on paper. They would often attend rallies and protests with other QAnon believers as well.
So they would go there, like, and there would be so many people, and they would make new friends.
Flo wonders about the new friends his parents were making.
And there were always like real Nazis on these protests as well. And I told them, like, that's not a good thing to walk with these people. Even, like, you know, like, you should, like, don't do that. No. There's no such people there.
It seemed to Flo that his mother was deeper into the conspiracy theories than his father.
I mean, he believes in that stuff as well, but he's not that, you know, he will not go and try to brainwash other people, stuff like this, you know. But my mom does so constantly. She can't talk about anything else, you know.
Flo tells me that there are a lot of QAnon adherents in the area of Germany that he lives in.
Like, we had, like, some protests marching by my window, like, 3 or 4 times. And I'm just, like, at the window, like, you know, sometimes filming, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? They have megaphones, you know, and especially now, like, since the war started in Ukraine, it got worse. Because these people tend to be on Russia's side, you know. They, like, what Trump is for you guys, like, in North America, like, Putin somehow is for these guys here, you know, like the one true leader, you know.
If you'll recall from last week's episode, Catherine talked about her German family's generational trauma stemming from the Second World War through the Cold War era. Flo has similar theories as to how his parents came to be radicalized by QAnon ideas.
So, like, I think the base was already laid basically when they were born, because they were born in a state that was, like, highly regulated and spying on you. I mean, the German Democratic Republic was fucked up, you know. You couldn't say anything. Your neighbor would maybe, like, go to the you know, like, security police or something, and you would get dragged into prison and stuff. So it was a really bad. And I think that just, you know, imprinted them on, you can't trust the state or something.
He sees a correlation between those who resided in the German Democratic Republic and extreme thought.
These parts of Germany that belonged to the German Democratic Republic, they have the lowest vaccination rates nowadays as well, so the people are still skeptical.
Flo also believes that their religion played a part in his parents' radicalization.
Conspiracy theories really are making the rounds in these evangelical circles.
All of his grandparents are Christian as well, and it worries him that one day they may become radicalized too.
This skepticism towards science in general, like how old the earth is, creationism, stuff like this, has always been in this family. And it's not a big leap to jump to the conspiracy stuff. If you're always anti-science and you always like, your whole life you said, like, I don't accept all facts that science gives me, it's not a big leap to jump to this kind of stuff.
For now, though, his extended family supports him.
The rest of my family, though, they're still on my side, you know, except for my brother. He's on their side. He, like, for example, he bought, like, lots of silver coins and shit like this because he thought, like, the economy might crash, so he has something to trade in, or I don't know. I haven't seen him since a couple of years.
Age is another factor that Flo believes plays a role in the radicalization of Q adherents.
It's mostly older people. because they don't know how to use the internet, you know? They don't have the competence to look for like information that is like true and not fake, and they don't understand that people who write stuff like this make money out of it. Clicks is money, and controversial topics get a lot of clicks. And the probability for someone to do that is just way higher than like a real conspiracy happening.
Something that I think all Q followers have in common is some sort of void, something lacking in their lives that Q replaces or fulfills for them. Flo believes this to be true with his mother as well.
I think basically you could boil it down to a fucking midlife crisis, actually. She has a good job that earns good money, but she doesn't like the job. She's her own boss though, but she hates working.
He says his parents would complain about working so hard all their lives and not getting what they deserve.
Yeah, they really have a grudge.
Their relationship wasn't perfect either.
My mom and my dad, you know, the marriage was kind of complicated. My mom didn't like her job, you know. I traveled for many years, so they saw that and they were like, oh man, when we were young, we couldn't do that, you know, because we were trapped in this almost communist country when we grew up and stuff like this. And this all came together. It was a perfect storm, you know. It was just an excuse to basically freak out, you know, an outlet for all frustrations in life, you know.
Flo's parents struggle to hide their unhappiness.
They're bitter. They pretend not to be. They pretend, and they're always like, we're not scared, you're scared.
But Flo isn't scared the way they think he is.
I'm not thinking every day about like some shadow government pulling the strings.
When I asked Flo what was the wildest thing the Qs in his life had ever said, he had an unbelievable answer.
We had a big flood in one valley here because like all the rain fell suddenly and like people died, like houses got swept away, stuff like this. It was really, really bad. It was a catastrophe, basically. And this guy said like, basically that the government controls the weather and they made the flood happen.
Flo has tried every angle to get his parents to see reason.
Economic angles, psychology angles, you name it, to explain it to them. Like on Reddit, explain it like I'm 5, you know? In this kind of style, you know? To make it easy for them to understand it.
As a psychology student, Flo has had to analyze a lot of statistics, and he's tried to use them to explain to his parents how they are wrong about their many conspiracy theories.
Like just statistics, for example, like at uni, we have a lot of statistics in psychology. And statistics doesn't work like people think it does. You know, there's many things come just down to luck. And I try to explain that to them, that for them it's hard to understand because like it's hard to understand for a layman. And I don't like, it's not an issue with that, but I take an issue with that if I explain it to them and they don't even think about what I just said. Like, they don't even try to challenge the view with the new information I just gave them.
He became increasingly frustrated with his parents as it became more and more clear that they were not discussing these things with him in good faith.
It came down to discussions like these that I tried to, I would say something, they would say something, and I would try to, you know, like put something against that, and that with logic and good arguments and stuff. And they would just like ignore it and send more links. But what about this? But what about this? And what about that? Instead of, you know, like arguing my point.
Eventually, the conversation would take a turn.
And then they resorted to personal attacks. You know, first it was all political, but then they changed and then it got personal. They would take everything they could just to win the argument or like dominate the discussion, even though it had nothing to do with the point we were arguing about, you know. They told me I hate them. I must hate them now. I'm like, no, fuck. If I hated you, I wouldn't care about you getting dragged down into stupid shit.
Even in light of the way they treated him, Flo didn't give up.
If they would write me, I would still try because I love them, you know. I don't want to lose them. And I can't sit around and just do nothing, you know.
Eventually, however, it all became too much for Flo. And as someone who has been exactly where he is, I understand. It's too much to take on. It's exhausting and heartbreaking. It infects every aspect of your life and begins to eat away at your other relationships too. Eventually, Flo realized it was a waste of his time, his energy, and his concern.
Nowadays, like, I don't do anything anymore.
When we come back, I ask Flo what changed. What made him give up on talking to his parents? His answer is extraordinary.
The Q Drop podcast is produced by Porthos Media, a Canadian independent audio, video, and written content company. If you're in need of audio or video production, editing, or copywriting, visit www.porthosmedia.net. The Q Drop podcast theme song, Mother of Alice, is written, performed, and produced by Porthos Media, so get in touch if you need original music for your upcoming project.
Flo has given up on trying to argue with his parents. He pinpoints one specific action taken by them that made him throw in the towel.
Selling the house and just like not even fucking telling me. That hit home.
This is how I found Flo. He had posted on Reddit's QAnon Casualties subreddit, explaining that his parents had sold his home, which was the center of the family, and it was a place that meant something to him, a place that he would inherit one day. It had been the central hub of his family, a home to come back to after he traveled the world. It was every bit his home as it was the home of his parents.
The family had a safe place to go if shit would go down in the future.
What's worse is that they did it without telling anyone, and they moved over 9,000 kilometers away. Flo had had a feeling that this could happen for a long time.
I told my girlfriend, man, if they get like stupid ideas, they might sell the house and just leave the country or something. And everyone was like, nah, they're not stupid, that's crazy, that's their dream house, that's all they ever wanted. But then it happened.
Flo was heartbroken.
It's like a betrayal. It feels, I can't find words for the feeling. It's a really strange feeling.
The wildest part of all of this is that his parents were moving to Costa Rica. They were moving from Germany to Costa Rica without telling their son, to whom they had always been close. They were in the middle of putting 9,000 kilometers between themselves and their son without telling him in advance.
And they were just like, yeah, we're going to Costa Rica. The house is sold already. So that's that.
I asked Flo what he thought made them choose this path.
They have been to Costa Rica, I think, in 2021. In the winter, because it was one of the countries still allowing visitors, like Mexico. I know shitloads of people who went to Mexico because they don't want the vaccine, and Mexico lets you in. And then they met some other German people, and they were like, same way of thinking. And they were like, you know what? We're building a house here, we're moving to here, because here you're free, like Germany is a dictatorship now, and stuff like this. And they were like, oh yeah, actually that's a great idea.
Of course, what gets him the most is that they never told him. Instead, he had to find out through the family grapevine.
Because they have like this good relationship with my girlfriend's mom now, because they're in the same camp basically, they told them. She told my girlfriend told me.
They didn't even ask him to take the family pet, instead rehoming it elsewhere without a word.
I would have asked, hey man, you want the cat maybe? We're selling the house and I know, you like the cat always, so you want to take the cat maybe? Ask me. I would have said no, because I just have a small flat and the cat is better off at the house with new people, but still, just ask me,
Flo struggles with his emotions stemming from these events.
I was really angry, yeah. But I can't describe the feelings. It's such weird feelings. It's a mix between so many different feelings. It's weird. It's unreal, basically. That's what makes it so hard. It's so unreal that like a thought in someone's head can totally fuck them up.
Flo couldn't help but take a step back.
This is the problem. They wouldn't shut up about it, They always this topic. You couldn't just say, hey, let's just talk about something else. Not possible. And I told them I don't want to hear about it because I dragged myself out of this hole and I don't want to fall back into it. I say, I don't want to hear about this stuff. It's not true. And I lost years of my mental health to this shit, I don't want to be dragged into it again. And they didn't respect that, and that made me angry,
He barely speaks to his parents anymore.
I cut contact by like maybe 95%. There will be some messages on New Year's, Christmas, birthdays, stuff like this. But I won't call them. I won't talk to them because like, I can't. They're just not the people I used to know. Like the people they are now, I don't really want to talk to. They're still my parents, yeah, but they're not my parents, not the ones I knew.
He says there's no point in talking to them anyway.
And they made it clear that they don't give a shit what I think about it. They made that really, really clear. I'm the enemy now.
Flo says he has fond memories of his parents and his childhood, and he wants to hang on to those as he moves forward with his own life.
I want to remember them how they were. I don't want these memories like getting replaced by what they're saying and doing now. Despite
their relationship breakdown, Flo still worries about his parents every day.
I'm scared of my parents getting scammed out of the money, I mean, they believed all these bullshitters on the internet, Why wouldn't they believe some scammer that comes along? Their English is not like mine, and they can't speak Spanish. Like, why wouldn't they believe some fucking scammer?
He worries about his grandparents as well.
Like my grandparents were my business as well. If they die because they get brainwashed by my parents and I didn't do nothing to stop it, it's my business.
Of course, Flo also worries about what their family will look like in the future.
I'm scared of Christmas and stuff like this, like Christmas, birthdays. I might marry my girlfriend someday, I think I wouldn't even invite them.
Flo is suffering from profound loss. He's mourning the loss of his parents who still breathe, but he's also mourning the loss of his own identity.
It's the loss of identity as well. I always had the identity of I come from a complete family, a good family, and that was always it doesn't matter what happens. If I get sick or if I get depressed or whatever, I will still have this awesome family. And I was sure that would never go away. That was the basis for life, basically. The base. And that's gone. And it's a huge hit to your identity. Because you're not the person anymore who will sit at a nicely decorated Christmas table, you will be someone who is alone with his girlfriend in the flat. And that is weird because it just affects your identity, and this is the hardest for me to cope with.
He also deeply feels the loss of what could have been.
And I'm grieving the times we would have had in the future. That I'm grieving. I know I'm gonna miss out on so many awesome family gatherings now.
I asked him if he thought things could ever go back to the way they were.
The relationship will never be the same. That's for sure, right now. If they came to me now and apologized for everything and told me we're sorry, we got dragged into something, we really regret that, let's fix that, I would be open to that immediately. I don't hold any grudge.
But Flo says the trust wouldn't be there.
Yeah, the trust is damaged, definitely. Because I trusted them with everything. But now I'm not so sure anymore. If some con man on the internet, if the word of some stupid guy on the internet is worth more than my 50 pages of explanation, and come on, I mean, I'm not as important as these political views to them anymore.
I think most people can see that Q followers have done this to themselves. You can't just treat a loved one like the enemy for years and expect there to be no fallout. Flo agrees.
They behave basically, they put themselves in the corner, behave like assholes, and they're pointing the finger at everyone and us saying basically you guys, you're stupid, we know better. And then they're whining and bitching about being put in a corner. No, you put yourself there, So I think for the society it will have, and it has, consequences.
The consequences of QAnon, Flo says, will be unavoidable.
If we stray that far from reality or what's considered facts, how can we talk about anything in the future? We can't talk about anything maybe but the weather, because the weather not even the weather we can talk about, because climate change is not real, So there is no topics and there is no basis for for discussions, because there is no facts, there's no reality, you know. It's poison. It erodes your mind more and more every day.
Heading into the future, Flo is glad he has his girlfriend by his side.
Me and my girlfriend try coping together and just waiting and try, we finish university, we get our shit together, and then we just, you know, like, then, you know, we're not dependent on them anymore. Like, money will come as well, you get a job, you work professionally. I just, basically, you know, I'm in a position, I'm actually thinking about, like, specializing on that kind of thing, like as a psychologist, you know, on that kind of, because it happened to me. So, actually, I'd like to help people in the same situation. That might be an idea to cope with it and to make something positive out of the pile of shit. We are in this together, all of us.
My sincerest thanks to Flo for taking the time to tell us his heartbreaking story. In the next episode, we speak with Josh.
The sorts of people my father was mixed up in and what they were fully capable of doing after the Oklahoma City bombing, it started to occur to me how lucky my dad was to maybe get out of there. And when I saw him begin to succumb to Q, to MAGA thinking, it really, really, really unsettled me because I thought that he had finally pulled free of all of that.
Make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform to hear Josh's story, and be sure to sign up for Patreon to see video of my interview with Flo, along with extras from other episodes. Thanks for listening.